Good morning. Just give Zoom and Facebook a minute to get organized here while everybody comes on. Thanks for joining me. The topic of the day, and I will put this on my YouTube, but for those of you who are watching live or are watching close to when this is live, it is the morning of March 16th, 2020. And it is the US is still trying to get its arms around the coronavirus. Today is the first day of closure for our daycare. So I don't know about you, but I've got a kid at home who would normally here on a Monday morning be at daycare, but he's not. So if that's you as well, I'm with you. And I think all that we can do as working mothers is the best that we can. And that is true on any day, but it is especially true in these evolving times and in these evolving circumstances. So, if you are a working mom with a daycare that closed, uh, I'm with you, and I appreciate the challenge that you are facing this week as the week dawns, and the that we're in a little bit of uncertainty here as to when those daycares might reopen and what to do. And the theme that I want to speak to you about this morning is there's really no wrong answer. What to do vis-a-vis yourself, what to do vis-a-vis your child or children, and what to do vis-a-vis work. The answer is do the best you can under the circumstances. So specifically, what I want to talk about this morning is new mothers and the decisions to social distance, whether to do it, how long to do it, what exactly to do, how much social distance, all those questions I can imagine you would be asking yourself. And it's that theme. There's no wrong answer. There really isn't. The more sort of fundamental thing that I want to suggest to you is that as a new mom who has a baby, and in my coaching practice, I work specifically with new moms who are over the age of 40, but I don't care what age you are. Any new mother, you've got a lot going on. Any new mother, you're adjusting to motherhood. Your life is changing very rapidly, and you've got this tiny new baby. So you're now making decisions not only for yourself but also for your new baby, and these decisions in a time where we've got a lot of uncertainty from the coronavirus. The decisions seem very heightened, and the sort of public collective atmosphere of fear and panic, making your decisions seem to your brain to be that much more important and crucial. So I want to kind of unwind some of that for us and take some steps back. So if you are a new mom who is in the middle of trying to make a decision about social distancing, just sit with me for a moment here and take a couple of deep breaths. If you're like most of America, you have had a lot of incoming information. I'm putting this on my Facebook page, so you might be on Facebook right now trying to decide what to do. Take a couple of deep, deep breaths. The answer for what to do about social distancing is not out in the world. It is not on Facebook. It is not on the news. It is inside of you. The answer about whether or not to stay home, whether or not to let people come to your home, all of those decisions, the answers are inside of you. That's not what our brain tells us. Our brain tells us that we need to be on the search for information, especially at a moment like this, right? Where it is a very rapidly evolving situation. Like on Friday, what we all thought on Friday is not what we think and or not even what we know, right? Like the actual facts have changed between Friday and Monday. It's a very rapid pace of change for the human brain. So our brains want us to be sort of scanning the news and scanning social media and gathering information. What I'm telling you runs against that. What I'm telling you is that absolutely, inform yourself to the extent that you can, right? Like, but there's a difference between informing ourselves and sort of feeding ourselves a lot of really unhelpful information. Decide, decide, decide on purpose how much information you're going to take in. Who are the sources of information that you're going to selectively take in? And then what are you going to do with that information? Why does your brain tell you that's a terrible idea? Because the human brain thinks that part of its job is to seek out threats and protect you from them. That's always the case. That is always the case. But especially in a time like this, where we do have a rapidly evolving situation, where we do have new information that's becoming available to us constantly, your brain is sort of hyper aware. And guess what? As a new mom with a brand new baby, your brain is already hyper aware of taking care of the baby. You're in this sort of mode. Part of your adjustment to new motherhood is this mode of hyper awareness and hyper vigilance. So all of us have sort of the normal human compulsion to keep ourselves protected and safe. This is our brain's job, is to keep us protected and safe. But in the case of new mothers specifically, you have this extra hormonal and biochemical reaction to your new motherhood going on. So I just want to give you that. If you feel like you're kind of out of control and freaking out, that is normal. Literally, your body is in a state of being where it's doing that on purpose. So again, back to my suggestion to take some deep breaths. Take some deep breaths and be very gentle with yourself for a few moments. Know that what is going on for you might feel really chaotic and really out of control, but it's totally normal. Just kind of give yourself a moment with that. And then from that place, my suggestion is that you kind of drop inside yourself and let yourself make a decision about social distancing, about what you're going to do, for how long you're going to do it, and what exactly that's going to look like for you and the new baby. And it is interesting. Some of you might be kind of in a little bit of a tug of war, right? Like, oh, I want to go out and do stuff. I want to be sort of out in the world right now. That's fine. It's also totally fine to not want to go anywhere. When my baby was tiny and I had just, given birth, I went through a phase where I did not want to go anywhere. That is also fine. It totally is. I didn't want to go to the grocery store. I didn't want to go, I was like having everything delivered, uh, just kind of like this urge to kind of shelter in place, which I thought was great. Other people sort of wanted me to get out of the house. And sometimes I did, and sometimes I didn't, but I paid a lot of attention to what other people wanted me to do. And don't know that that really served me. Looking back on it. But whatever, it was what I did. My urge was to stay in the house and kind of stay cloistered with my new baby. If that's the urge you're having, fantastic. Then the social distancing decision might be really easy for you. You're like, I'm not going out there. I don't care what happens. I'm staying in. Fine. Good for you. Get your food delivered, just hunker down. It's totally fine. But if you do have, people in your life who are like, oh, get out and do stuff, you can pay attention to those people or not. It's completely up to you. The decisions and how you want to be in the world right now, completely up to you. If you are kind of stir crazy, that is also an option that's available to you. You certainly can decide that the best thing for you is to get out in the world and get some air. Maybe you do want to go to the coffee shop. Maybe you do want to be kind of out and about or have a trip to the grocery store and, get out and do a couple of things just for a change of scenery. There's no wrong answer. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. You get to decide what is the right thing to do for you and the baby right now. So make your decision. Make your decision and own your decision and live your decision for a little while. Let your decision, whatever it is, be the right decision. Um, there's no reason to judge your decision. Your decision about whether or not to stay home, it's yours. You've made it. Judging it, second guessing yourself, kind of continuing to go and look for opinions. I don't think those things are useful. Um, if you pretend you decide that I'm going to stay home for a week, I'm going to give this a week. The social distancing and the school closures that are going around the country and all the data tracking that the government's doing, we're going to have more information next week. Right? Those are things that are going to happen. So fine. So you make a decision. It's a Monday morning, March 16th. I'm staying in the house for a week. Period. Just make a decision and stick with it. You will relieve yourself of so much of the second guessing, so much of the sort of opinion seeking, kind of pinging the outside world to see, what should I be doing? Is this right or is this wrong? You just give yourself a break. Give yourself a break from all of that. There's an angst and a sort of anxiety involved in the information seeking. I suggest to you that there is relief to be had by making a decision, making a powerful decision, and sticking to it. And then in a week, you say, okay, I will now assess the situation. I will now decide again what I'm going to do, and I will stick with my decision. And if my mother or mother-in-law or friend or partner or any of the other people in my life has opinions about my decision, I will say, okay, I'm going to redecide in a week. Just own your decision, whatever it is. Have your own back about your decision. You don't need to explain or justify your decision about social distancing to anyone. You can go wherever you want to. It's a free country. Yeah, the coronavirus is out there. It totally is. You get to decide what you're going to do about it. You get to own your decision and you get to have your own back about your decision. So it's funny, this phenomenon that we have about the fact that this is all really rapidly unfolding. So our brains kind of include this like series of landmines in our thoughts about, well, I don't know enough yet. I don't know enough. I'm going to know more later on. That's true. We're going to know more stuff later on. We're going to know more in a week than we know now, and then a week after that, and then so on into the future. The fact that the you of the future is going to have more information is no reason for the you of today to not be able to make a decision. Do you see what I'm saying here? We use this against ourselves. Like, well, I'm going to know more stuff later on. And if I make a decision right now, I might find out later that I made the wrong decision. Stop it. That is a no, that is a lose-lose proposition to have a train of thought right in your own head. I can't make a decision right now because I'm going to have more information in the future. That's always true. So then the you of the moment is trapped in this state of indecision, which is likely a state that's causing you anxiety and, probably having all kinds of non-desirable consequences. Make a decision, have your own back about it, and allow that the you of the future is going to have new information and gets to make different decisions. This is why you decide something for a week. That creates automatically the time where the you of the future gets to make a new decision. She doesn't get to be a jerk to the you of today that's made the decision of whatever social distancing you're going to do or not do. There may be points where this decision causes you some discomfort, right? Fine. I suggest to you to allow it to be fine, to make a decision about social distancing, stick with your decision, and then have a couple points along the way where you are uncomfortable. If you do get that phone call from your mother or your mother-in-law or some other person in your life who's like, what are you, asking you questions or making suggestions or whatever the case may be, it's okay, right? Like everybody's everybody's being challenged by this new world order. We're humans. We are creatures of habit. 95% of our thoughts and decisions are being made by the back of our brain, by the habitual part of our brain, like that primitive part of our brain. What we do every day and how we do it, and what goes into our lives. 95% of that we relegate to the back of our brain. With this rapid change and society adjusting to the coronavirus, all of us as individuals are making that adjustment. So we have to drag a bunch of stuff that's back here in the automatic primitive part of our brain, drag it back to the front of our brain, to our prefrontal cortex, and deal with it. Our brain thinks that that's terrible. Our brain thinks that that's exhausting. This is just the brain functioning the way that the brain functions. So the people in your life are doing that same thing, right? Like every parent who has a child at my kid's daycare is waking up on a Monday morning when they would usually get their child ready, send them off to daycare. They're not doing that because the daycare is closed. So everybody's brain is like, da 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 da, how do I deal with this? How do I work, right? All these are, working moms with children and working parents with children in daycare. How do I work? Am I telecommuting? How am I telecommuting with a child in the house? Am I still going into my job? Like, what's happening here? Everybody's doing that. So everybody's got this state of internal anxiety and stress, and their brain sort of telling them this is a huge problem. This is all a big problem. We have to solve this problem. So everybody that you, as a new mom, having major decision, looked inward, a major decision, everybody that you're dealing with is having that sort of thought cocktail going on in their head. Unless they've been exposed to coaching and they're managing their thoughts, that's what they're doing. So back to what I said at the very beginning, right? Like sort of pausing and slowing down and having some compassion for yourself and where you are. It's not a bad idea to take some of that compassion, spread it out to the people in your lives. When they call you to talk about social distancing and what are you doing and why aren't you doing it? And, come over or don't come over or, meet me for lunch or whatever people might say, you might experience some discomfort as you take your decision and use your decision to interact with the rest of the world and the people that you know. You might experience some discomfort. Take a deep breath. Just know that going in. That way, when you do get the phone call and it's an invitation and you say yes or you say no or whatever, you know that the discomfort is arising and that that's normal and that that's okay and that there's nothing to be gained for judging yourself or judging others, quite frankly. It's just not useful to us at this point. Everybody's got this going on in their head. Everybody's adapting. Everybody's doing the best that they can. So we can sort of let go of the self-judgment, let go of the judgment of other people that we know, and agree that we're all going to do the best we can through this. So I think that the most useless word for us right now is the word should. I should stay home. I should go out. I should do whatever. So it's useless as applied to ourselves. It's also useless as applied to the rest of the world, right? Like they should be, I shouldn't have to decide whether or not to go out. Other people shouldn't invite me places. Other people should understand. I just don't think there's anything good by having a train of thought as regards to the social distancing that involves the word should. If you hear yourself, if you hear your brain sort of coughing up should a lot to you, those might be times for deep breaths. Those might be times for compassion. Those might be times for you to kind of say, okay, I'm getting a big storm of should in my head. Where's that going? Is that getting me anywhere? Quite possibly not. And then to the extent that your brain doesn't want you to make a decision, your brain's like, I don't have enough information. I need to keep on watching the news or keep on scrolling Facebook or whatever you're doing to get information. Your brain doesn't want you to make a decision. I'm going to suggest to you that there is no power in confusion, that there is no power in indecision. But if you make a decision, you make a strong decision based on your internal, capacity as a mother, you get a tremendous amount of power. You get a tremendous amount of certainty that you give to yourself, right? It doesn't belong to the outside world. It's not derived from the outside world. It is yours, and you get to draw from it for as long as you need to. Make that decision, make it a powerful one, give that gift to yourself, and then keep on going. Keep on doing the best that you can. So it's been so fascinating to me as I've watched all of this unfold and watched the daycare close, et cetera, et cetera. I've had a story from my childhood that keeps popping into my brain. So my mother was born in 1942. So I'm an over 40 mom. I coach women who are over 40 first-time mothers or expecting mothers who are the family breadwinner. So those are my specialty in my coaching practice. So I was born in 1974. My mother was born in 1942. My grandmother, I need to look up her exact birth date. I think she was born in the 19 teens. So when my mother was a little girl, they lived in a very, very rural and remote part of South Georgia, or sorry, North Georgia. They lived in a rural and remote part of North Georgia that was essentially, part of Appalachia at the time. So it was like 1946 or 47, maybe. My mother was like 4 or 5 years old, and there was a polio outbreak. So here they are, they live on this farm. They're deeply impoverished, right? Like they were literally sort of scratching food out of the ground. And really they didn't have indoor plumbing. They had an outhouse. They didn't get plumbing in the house until uh like the 50s. They had some access to rural electrical service. So they had power like during parts of the day, but they didn't even have electricity all day. They're very remote. And the polio outbreak was so terrifying to my grandmother. They didn't have access to the polio vaccine where they lived. So, she just felt really unprotected, remote, terrified, very little information. So she kept my mother in the house during this polio outbreak. And I never really got a clear answer on how long that was. My mother's, brain as a child, she felt like it lasted forever. My grandmother was like, well, I did the right thing. My mother did not get polio. Other children in the community did get polio, and it was fatal. So, thinking about the fact that I'm sitting here talking to all of you right now on the internet, you know, from my home, like video conference studio where I coach people over the internet. The fact that I'm only 2 generations removed, my mother and my grandmother, away from a situation where literally polio epidemic, rural, no plumbing, farm animals, barely any electricity, zero information. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Isn't it amazing how far we have come in a couple of generations? That we now have the ability to get a constant stream of information about the coronavirus from multiple sources. I mean, some of those sources are, news entities that are really just advertising to us, really. And some of them are Facebook and all that it has to offer, and the rest of social media. And then, international sources and the Centers for Disease Control and all these other sources of information. We can get so much information that we are drowning in information. So, 2 generations ago, my grandmother, like hiding in the house with her child, would have given anything for information. And here we are, almost paralyzed by it, almost overwhelmed by it. Isn't that fascinating? I'm glad we have this information. I really, really am. My grandmother chose to use the information that she had to make the decision to stay home, right? No church, no interacting with people. We're going to stay home. We're going to let the polio outbreak do its thing, and we are going to stay home. That was the decision that she made at the time with the information that she had. We have so much available to us. And I invite us to all make our decision for ourselves as best as we can. As I was growing up and I was sort of hearing about this polio outbreak and what they did and what it was like during that time, it was something that my grandmother and my mother both spoke about with a lot of fear. Like it was a time of deep uncertainty, a time of deep, deep fear. And that, they were just tremendously affected by it. So, how are our children going to talk about, excuse me, excuse me, I've had the flu meanwhile. So that's what that was, just a little leftover cough from the flu. But back to my point, how are our children going to talk about this phase in their lives, right? Schools are closed, sports are canceled, et cetera, et cetera. How are they going to talk about this time during, the early part of 2020 where everything got closed and canceled for a while and we all stayed home? Is there a way that we as adults can, make this a lesson for them that is not a lesson in being paralyzed by fear, right? Is there a way to make this sort of a lesson in how to be the best humans, how to have the most compassion, how to protect each other, right? We did this, we stayed home for a couple of weeks so that we could protect the most vulnerable among us. Is that something that we can do? Is that something that helps us as we make our decisions, as we decide as new moms what we're going to do and talk to our families? And if you are a mom with older children and you're talking to them about what's happening, are those the ways that we do empower ourselves, that we take all of this as education and as empowerment rather than as just a lesson in how to be scared out of our minds and freak out? I think there's a lot of power to be had one way, and that there's absolutely no empowerment in being scared out of our minds and freaking out. So I hope that some of this has been helpful to you. If you are a new mom who's making a decision about social distancing, I'm happy to be in touch with you. If you want, you can certainly reach out to me. You can send me a message or check out my website, which is in my contact info here on my Facebook page. But I am Heather Hennessy from Heather Hennessy Life Coaching, and I do specialize in coaching over 40 brand new mothers who are the family breadwinner. So good luck, everybody, as you make your decisions, and I'll be back later in the week with some more information. Thanks very much.